Hi, I'm Wes Kale. Welcome to the program. Today we're going to be talking about meeting minutes. In our view, meeting minutes are perhaps one of the most important tools you have at your disposal. They're second only to status reports in their ability to discipline efforts and focus attention upon the issues of the day. Unfortunately, most folks tend not to do them. More specifically, in small and medium-sized organizations, staff tend not to do them on a consistent basis. In large organizations, meeting minutes typically do get done, but they're often done in such a way that it neutralizes a great deal of their effectiveness. So what we're going to do for the next couple of shows is talk about what are meeting minutes and how you should do them. And our hope is that you'll learn enough about meeting minutes to understand that you can do them without incurring a bunch of extra work, and learn how to do them in such a way that they have a significant impact upon the effectiveness of your projects. So let's take a look at our agenda. We have a pretty short agenda for our first show. We're going to start off by looking at what meeting minutes do. I mean, we do meeting minutes for a reason, but what is it they really do when we put them together and send them out? We're then going to look at some of the impediments that prevent us from doing meeting minutes on a consistent basis, and hopefully by understanding those impediments, we'll be able to overcome them going forward. We're then going to talk about the different categories of meeting minutes. Most folks think that minutes are minutes, they're just notes, right? Well, that's just not true. There are actually 3 different categories of meeting minutes, and they work quite differently, and while they share a common name and a common purpose, how they achieve that purpose is done quite differently. And coming out of that discussion, we'll highlight the importance of what we call purpose-driven minutes, and then we'll close this show by looking at some of the rules that pertain to purpose-driven meeting minutes. You'll note that we will not do a review at the end of this show. We're going to save that for the end of our second show. And by the way, in the second show, we're going to address the how-to piece of doing meeting minutes. And what we'll do is we'll show you how to put together meeting minutes in a way that's convenient and easy for you to do without losing any of the effectiveness of what they can do for you. So, moving on to what meeting minutes do. And meeting minutes do basically 2 things. The first one is pretty dry. They capture information. And fundamentally, meeting minutes capture 3 types of information. First of all, they capture facts. And here I'm speaking of both the vanilla data points like who was present at the meeting, what was handed out, what was reviewed and discussed, on up to more critical items like what risks were identified and discussed, what were the causes of problems that were identified, what business rules surfaced, and things of that nature. The second thing that meeting minutes capture are commitments. And while we'll talk a lot more about commitments in a later video cast, what their meaning is and how they work, for now, it's just important to know that a commitment is an agreement to do something. And while folks tend to do a pretty good job of capturing task-level commitments, the to-dos of the meeting, one of the most overlooked and certainly one of the most crucial commitments that we should be capturing in minutes are the broad support commitments that are made by managers and executives. Folks tend to say all the right things in meetings, and it's important to capture that information for later reference. We'll see in a moment why it's very important to capture situations where someone agrees that they or their organization will do something. And third, meeting minutes capture positions, and here I'm referring to capturing the general view of attendees on a consequential issue. The most important types of positions are what we call endorsements and demurrals. Endorsements are agreements to support something, and demurrals are statements that you're going to back away, you're not going to support it. And listed this way, the 3 things that meeting minutes capture, facts, commitments, and positions, may seem a little bit bland, but the meaning of it is anything but. Because the second thing that meeting minutes do is that they bring form to topics. Meeting minutes act as a governing instrument over the project. They are a tool that extends the influence of the project manager not only beyond the audience that was in the meeting, but also over time to future events. You see, meeting minutes, like status reports, do 4 things. First of all, they establish the truth. Recall in Vcast 3 that we identified among the top 5 practices the need to establish one truth and keep it. At that time, we were focused upon status reports. But meeting minutes, like status reports, serve as a forge for converting facts, things we captured up at the top, into truth. By capturing facts and then transparently distributing those facts to a broader audience, this dissemination of the facts acts as a forge for maturing those facts from the state of what you think you heard into a truth that is binding upon all stakeholders, not just those who attended the meeting. This is particularly helpful when dealing with complex or sensitive topics, such as when a key understanding of a process step or business rule or a timing dependency comes up in a meeting. These events tend to surface rather quickly and then submerge, never to be seen again, and that's why you want to capture them in meeting minutes. The second thing that meeting minutes do is that they prevent forgetfulness. We all need help remembering things, and some meetings can cover an awful lot of ground. It's just unreasonable to expect that all attendees will remember each topic the same way. Meeting minutes help fix this. The third thing meeting minutes do is that they constrain the deniers. More problematic than forgetting things are that you may have some folks who will deny or gainsay the meaning or outcome of certain topics that took place in the meeting. They won't say that they forgot it. They will say that they remember it in a completely different way than you do. Well, meeting minutes are helpful in establishing what it is that you recall from the meeting so that you can have an informed discussion as to what really took place. And lastly, meeting minutes inform and coordinate the actions of the stakeholder community going forward. And these two abilities of meeting minutes, to act as a capturing tool for information and to bring form to amorphous topics, mean that meeting minutes are not just some administrative tasking. They are a vital and powerful tool for controlling the forward progress of your projects. Now, given all these benefits, you might think that we do meeting minutes for every meeting, but we don't. And we don't do them for some very good reasons. The fact of the matter is that meeting minutes require some work. And this is so for a couple of reasons. First of all, when a meeting is over, we all just want to get out of there and move on to the next item in our day. Few people want to go back and revisit a meeting and then perform what is sometimes viewed as an administrative function. Secondly, because most folks are not clear about what constitutes good minutes, we can fall into the trap of writing what I call transcription type minutes, and these can be very laborious and take an inordinate amount of time to do. And we'll discuss transcription meeting minutes in just a moment. Finally, once we sit down to write meeting minutes, we become acutely aware that there is a lot more here than just some administrative function as we wrestle with how to word sensitive topics and try to recall who said what when. This can make writing minutes a very stressful affair that we have difficulty making time for later on. Secondly, meeting minutes require work during the meeting itself. If we're running the meeting and we know we have to do minutes, we have to focus upon both moving the discussion forward as well as capturing the substance of what was discussed and agreed to. The overhead of capturing traditional handwritten notes can be so onerous that it actually impedes the flow of the meeting and can cause participants to begin eyeing the exits if you're not careful. That is why it's usually best to have a scribe to capture the minutes during the meeting so you can focus upon managing the discussion. A third reason we don't do meeting minutes deals with political concerns. The simple fact is that during meetings, topics may come up or the discussion may turn in such a direction that it is clearly not in the best interest of one of the participants. And this can be very uncomfortable for everyone during the course of the meeting, and it can be particularly uncomfortable for the person who's writing up the meeting minutes afterwards. As you struggle with how to phrase the issue and the perspectives of the different participants, you may be filled with a lot of anxiety about how this is going to be received when you finally publish it. In fact, that anxiety can be so grave as to cause you to delay putting out the meeting minutes to the point that maybe the meeting minutes are no longer necessary and we can just move on without ever establishing a record of the meeting. Now, of course, this is not an optimal solution, but it happens. And finally, environmental concerns. Because meeting minutes are such powerful tools, some environments actually discourage the use of things like meeting minutes. And the arguments for doing so may range from claims that putting out meeting minutes deters individuals from being open and participating actively, to the fact that establishing records can provide an inappropriate degree of legal risk to the organization, or the possibility that meeting minutes may impede the creative or adaptive processes by being too backward focused as opposed to forward focused. While there are some cases where these concerns might be authentic. In most cases, these are just comfortable rationalizations that protect the interest of certain members of the organization. Now, these are 4 reasons for not doing meeting minutes. There are others. But we have to overcome these obstacles and find the will to use this tool because structured methods yield far better results in the long term than ad hoc approaches do. And meeting minutes are clearly a structured process. We have to understand that meeting minutes have the normal requirements associated with all structured methods. They require discipline, added upfront effort, and familiarization as they may not be intuitively obvious. But structured methods yield tremendous advantages over ad hoc methods in that they reduce risk, force transparency, create predictability, and are both more efficient and effective in the long term. So we have to overcome these obstacles to doing meeting minutes and commit to a structured approach to how we manage our work. And it all starts by making sure the minutes get done. Now, we mentioned earlier that not doing the minutes is one problem, but that in some larger organizations, they may do minutes, but do them in such a way that they undermine their effectiveness. In other words, we do them poorly. And there are several reasons for this as well. First of all, there's the political and environmental concerns that we mentioned above. If these forces are not strong enough to actually prevent the doing of meeting minutes, they certainly can be strong enough to impinge upon the effectiveness with which meeting minutes are done. Secondly, we simply don't follow the rules for doing minutes. And not following the rules for doing meeting minutes properly is the leading cause of why minutes are done poorly, and we'll talk about those rules in just a moment. Third, we tend to bureaucratize things. One of the reasons we see in very mature environments for doing meeting minutes poorly is the layering upon the actual act of writing the minutes of additional process and format that has the unintended effect of undermining the minutes themselves. Essentially, in the interest of enhancing distribution or search capability or whatever, what ends up happening is that we take our eye off the ball of doing the meeting minutes well. We're so caught up in the process or the formatting of the minutes that we don't write meaningful meeting minutes. So we got to be careful of this. And lastly, we do meeting minutes poorly because we use the wrong type. As we said at the beginning, there are different types of meeting minutes. And folks tend to think of meeting minutes in terms of transcriptions, the verbatim capture of information. These types of minutes are very painful to do and only appropriate under certain circumstances. In an organizational setting, they are virtually useless. So if you think transcriptions are the way to do minutes, it's understandable that you view meeting minutes as a very painful and pointless exercise to do. So let's talk a little bit more about these different types of meeting minutes, understand this more clearly. As we said, there are three basic structures for minutes. We call them topical, transcription, and purpose-driven. And while they're all targeted at the accurate capture of information that is emerging within the meeting, they do so in very different ways. First, let's look at the topical approach. These types of minutes are focused upon information dissemination. These are often targeted at non-attendees of the meeting and are meant to give you some insight into what took place during the meeting. You typically see these coming out of town hall meetings, staff meetings, or similar venues where management or a team has met in order to discuss what's going to be happening in the coming weeks and months, and they want to make sure that information gets out to the much larger stakeholder community. These minutes tend to provide highlights of the discussion and are generally summarized versions of the discussion where topics are addressed in a short conversational paragraph format designed to be digestible by non-attendees. The second type of meeting minutes are transcription meeting minutes. And these are not focused upon awareness or dissemination. Instead, capturing the integrity of the discussion is far more important. Transcription records are meant to be an unbiased, unaltered source of what was said. The goal of these minutes is to serve as a basis for later reference by accurately capturing everything that was said, by whom it was said, and in the sequence it was said. Now, that said, the meaning and significance of what was said in the meeting and how that information is used is not addressed in transcription minutes. That is left up to the various actors to address on their own using transcription minutes as their basis. So transcription minutes are not focused upon the substance of the meeting, they're focused upon the content of the meeting. So in one sense, transcription minutes are very helpful because they're a verbatim record of establishing the facts of what was spoken. The problem, though, is that because so much information in meetings is either circuitous or linked in a non-serial way, or contained in the summarization or characterization of what has been said, transcriptions require an inordinate amount of effort to capture information that may end up being the least significant. So given that a lot of work is involved and little value may be produced, no wonder people, if they think about transcription minutes as how you do meeting minutes, view minutes as an unnecessary and painful exercise. And now let's look at purpose-driven minutes. These are the minutes that we're going to focus upon during the course of our discussion. These minutes are focused upon the substance of the meeting. Purpose-driven minutes are used to drive issues to closure or to promote attainment of some goal. Consequently, they are written with an active purpose that focuses upon capturing the meaning of the discussion, not the vicissitudes of what was said. These types of meeting minutes are very bottom line upfront focused. To achieve this goal of capturing the bottom line, the author of purpose-driven meeting minutes is given great latitude in how he structures the discussion